Hey, what's up you guys? My name is Carson Rouse and welcome back to Business Buzz, where we focus on business, entrepreneurship, and investing. Today, I'm going to be going through the subtle differences between an index fund, a mutual fund, and an ETF. So investing can be really confusing and very overwhelming, especially when you first get started out learning about it. I think we all know this. And especially I've noticed a lot lately within the YouTube financial community that a lot of people use the words index fund, mutual fund, and ETF pretty interchangeably, but it's important to establish that there is a difference between the three, and they are subtle. They are subtle differences, but they are important to know. For that reason, I just want to go through the subtle differences of these three types of investments, give some examples, and by the end of this video, hopefully you have a better idea of the differences between the three, and hopefully you can make a decision over which of these three you're best suited to invest in, depending on your goals and strategies. Before we get into this video, make sure to go down and click that like button for me. I want at least 16 likes on this video, so if you go down and there's not 16 likes, make sure to smack it. First, I want to start off comparing index funds with mutual funds because they're probably the most comparable between these three. So an index fund is really a type of mutual fund. In fact, the man who created index funds actually did it in response to the fact that he hated mutual funds. He thought they were a ripoff, so he created the index fund, which tracks indexes. Some examples of an index could be the S&P 500 or the Vanguard large cap stocks. So whenever you turn on the financial news and you see those charts, the S&P 500, the Dow Jones, the Russell 2000, all the numbers and percentages, those are indexes, and index funds can track these indexes to match the market. So when you're investing in an index fund, you're really investing in usually hundreds of different stocks all at the same time. With the purchase of one buy, just clicking buy one time, you can buy hundreds of different stocks. So if you invested in the S&P 500, which is basically 500 of the largest cap stocks in the US, 500 of the biggest companies in the US, and then the market as a whole did pretty well, then you'd probably see a pretty good return on that investment because it basically tracks the market. Mutual funds is a more general term that applies to any financial vehicle that contains securities like stocks, bonds, and other assets. When investing in a mutual fund, you're actually purchasing and selling shares in the mutual fund company itself, not in the actual individual companies that you're going to be investing in. By far the biggest difference between a mutual fund and an index fund is that a mutual fund is actively managed, whereas an index fund 99 times out of 100 is passively managed. And what actively managed means is that one person, or usually a team of people, are constantly making changes to your portfolio. They're buying and selling stocks depending on what fits the investment strategy best. For example, an index fund may honestly hold the same stocks for the entirety of its existence. Technically a mutual fund can too, but that's usually not the case because there's advisors constantly making changes to the portfolio, really smart people who know a lot about the stock market. The way I like to think about it is that index funds follow formulas, kind of like a computer, whereas a mutual fund follows the brain, people's own decisions. That's the difference between the two and how they decide what they're going to be invested in. Due to this active management, though, mutual funds are generally more expensive. They have high expense ratios and a lot of fees. These smart people who are making decisions in your mutual fund aren't doing it for charity. They're getting paid, and they're usually getting paid a lot of money. So for mutual funds to keep up with this payroll, they have to charge you, the investors who are pulling all their money together, fees. Usually your fees are going to be around 2%. So if you invest $50,000 into a mutual fund, you're going to have to pay around $1,000 just in fees, whether you lose or make money. But that's the difference between an index fund and a mutual fund. An index fund is just trying to match and mirror the market, whereas a mutual fund's whole goal is to beat the market. That's why you're paying extra. You're paying extra so these really smart guys can make you more money than you would have. So that's basically the difference. An index fund tracks a market index, whereas a mutual fund is usually more broad and applies an investment strategy instead of a fixed categorization. Now, let's not leave out our good friend ETF. An ETF is short for Exchange Traded Fund, and it differs a little between mutual funds and index funds, but again, all these three are very similar at the end of the day. So ETFs can either be passively or actively managed, but they're usually passively managed and just track an index. A huge difference between an ETF and a mutual fund is that a mutual fund usually requires a minimum investment of at least a few $1,000s, but an ETF can be traded like any other stock, like shares, and if it's $50 a share, you can just buy one share. You also can't make automatic investments or withdrawals with an ETF, whereas with a mutual fund, you can. Similar to index funds, ETFs are also way more tax efficient.
I will pay no tax.
Because of the way they are created and redeemed. So you will be saving money come tax season. This is because tracking indexes doesn't require constant trading and in turn leads to lower capital gains taxes. There's really two main reasons that anybody would choose an ETF over an index or mutual fund. There are two big reasons. Number one is because they are very active. They're constantly making changes to their portfolio. That's reason number one. Reason number two is because they want to invest in a niche-based fund. Usually index funds and mutual funds do not track a niche, but ETFs, that's really what they're known for. I'll give you an example of a niche-based ETF. So I've talked about this on the channel before, but there is an ETF known as Cyber, and it's basically a cybersecurity ETF, and it basically contains a plethora of different cybersecurity companies. So if you believe that a certain industry is just going to pop off or at least give you consistent good returns, consider investing in an industry-based ETF. So if you really think that gaming is the future, find a good gaming ETF. So instead of betting all the farm on one or two gaming stocks, you can invest in the whole industry as a whole. Really, all of the investment strategies that I've just mentioned are great for beginner and veteran investors that are looking for a simplified way to invest. So instead of spending hours and hours every day researching individual stocks and trying to beat the market yourself, you can just invest in a fund like one of these three. They also offer great convenience and tax benefits in the sense that you don't got to go out and buy a little amount of shares in hundreds of different companies. No, they pile this up for you and you just hit buy one time. Here's just my little hint of advice though. I would stay away from mutual funds. The fees are pretty choking, 2% fees, and not to mention beating the market, or at least consistently beating the market, is almost impossible. Even the most professionals, the people who really know what they're talking about, struggle in doing so. So I would just stick to index funds and ETFs, but that is just my personal opinion. I'm gonna leave a poll right here over what you think is the best type of investment out of these three: mutual funds, index funds, or ETFs. So let me know in this poll what you think and comment down below your reasoning. Anyway, thank you guys so much. Like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. We are almost to 2,000 subs. That's crazy, and I'll see you guys next time.